United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just wanted to make one note. Originally on the agenda that was posted on Friday, but then updated today, we were going to set a public hearing for sidewalk legislation in the Heights. But we have decided to pull that and discuss that at next week's work session. So it's going to have some further discussion and review before we send it to public hearing. So I just wanted to make that one announcement. Was there any correspondence?
Yes, we have 3 letters that I will read aloud for the public record as requested.
Those are for public hearings.
For wetlands
Okay, so I'll have you read that.
and for,
So I'll have you read those at each public hearing then. Okay. But there's nothing that's non-public hearing correspondence. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any public comment on any resolutions that aren't subject to public hearings? Yeah, come on up.
Hello, Mike Gainer, 8 Cobb's Lane. I had a question about the 10K, about the permit for that. First of all, I want to say I'm a huge fan of the 10K. When I was living overseas, a lot of my friends that I served with overseas, Germans that I'd served with on NATO, had run inside of that race. They've flown all the way over here. So it has international recognition. So, but I just had some questions about process for that permit. Maybe Stephen could answer the question, sure. Can you tell me how do you apply for that permit? I would assume at this point in time that that's because you've been doing it so frequently. Is that something that Jim Reed would typically deal with, or do they file it with?
There's an outdoor assembly permit that is on the town website. It goes to the town clerk,
Okay.
and then she distributes it to a subcommittee that is comprised of Amber Wilson, Meg Larson, Chief Reed, and Ken Lewis, Highway Superintendent.
Okay, cool. I was reading the code. I saw the code section on it. If you print it out, it's 4 pages long. And based on my experience, anytime you have a process like that, it's something that the community takes very.
And then after they review it, then it comes to the town board and we discuss it at a work session and we invite the applicant to attend. So if we have any questions before getting to this point.
Oh, cool, good.
So then that's when the process stops and gets drafted into the resolution.
It seemed like some of the requirements inside of the code section really lean towards good corporate citizenship. Basically, I saw there's an element inside of it where if you've had a felony, for example, you can't apply for one of those permits and things like that. And so I had a question, and this is germane to this topic. About an hour ago, I purchased a ticket for the farm to table at Sylvester Manor online. It's $650 for one ticket, or $25,000 for a table. It's a very significant event. Have they applied for a permit? Because I was looking at the board meetings and I haven't seen it yet.
They have.
They have.
Yeah, we've received the application. The subcommittee is going to review it, see if it's missing any information, but it hasn't been reviewed yet. We haven't looked at it.
You haven't looked at it yet? Okay, because that event's in June 29th, and I saw that the application's in place and it's in process right now. As you're all aware, today I picked up a copy of a citation from the Department of Buildings that I've been trying to get since February. Citing Sylvester Manor for operating illegal use. I'm trying to truncate this, so I'm sure you don't need me to read that. They're operating an illegal use inside of a AA zone, and that's been going on for 8 years now. And as far as I'm concerned, that would clearly define them as not a good corporate citizen. And I'm curious to what extent the town is reflecting upon that the building department has established that that's a completely illegal use over there. They're required to get a special permit before they can operate there. They've got 30 days to cure that problem, which isn't going to happen. In order to cure it, they've got to go to the zoning board of appeals and file for a special use permit. This will easily go on for a year. As you're well aware, Perlman Center is going through that process right now. They applied in December and they're months away still from going to a hearing. And so I just was curious what your thoughts are with respect to issuing them.
It will be considered in the subcommittee, and then when it comes to the town board work session, it will be
Gotcha.
considered that.
Well, I would like you to know in advance what my position is going to be on that. Obviously, you know, I feel very strongly about how unequally and unfairly Sylvester Manor Educational Farm is enabled to operate inside of this community. To date, they have not received any citations for anything that they've done over there unless I come in here kicking and screaming about that. And I think that's a very, very significant problem. And so if the town of Shelter Island does issue a permit to them, I've instructed my attorney, he's been working on this matter for quite some time. He's going to be filing 2 whistleblower lawsuits. One with the federal government in the Eastern District in Central Islip. And the second is going to be with the state of New York in the state of New York Supreme Court in Riverhead. And those lawsuits are going to allege that a small collection of individuals inside of Shelter Island have misdirected public monies to Sylvester Manor that they should not have been doing. And that's been going on for quite some time. And so an example of that, I'm not sure how familiar you are with these whistleblower lawsuits, but the way they work, Stephen can explain that to you folks later. But essentially, you stand into the shoes of government. So you file a lawsuit on behalf of the United States government or the New York State, the state of New York. And so those lawsuits are effectively the same. Both the federal government and the state have these whistleblower lawsuits to protect the government from being defrauded. And so I brought with you a copy, and I just want to give you an example so you've got something to opine on.
I'm just going to pause you there because we're still, we started on the 10K.
Yeah,
Now you're wading into something that's not on the agenda.
I understand.
There is a public session, there is a public opportunity at the end of this meeting to discuss other matters that are not on the agenda. So
I'm effectively done, Amber. It'll be done in a couple of
just
minutes.
want-
No, I'm at the end of my list. I just wanted the community to be aware because this is going to affect a lot of people inside the community. It's going to certainly affect Sylvester Manor Educational Farm. And I know you folks think that I'm being very harsh on Sylvester Manor. I strongly disagree with that, based on the history of how they've been treated unequally inside of this community. And so I'm absolutely going to be filing those lawsuits if you guys issue those permits. I would also like to mention that if the community is willing to sit down with me and Sylvester Manor, because I'm tired of playing whack-a-mole with Sylvester Manor. Every time I turn my head, you guys are giving them one additional favor after another. That violation that was issued to them should have been issued 8 years ago. And I've been trying to get you guys to issue a violation. The violation notice for Sylvester Manor, it's 1 sentence long. It says exactly what I said the first day. This is common knowledge. It should have been, I don't know why it took so long and why I had to effectively pull teeth to get you guys to file that citation. In light of how much money has moved out of this town and into Sylvester Manor's coffers, I find that very, very, very deeply troubling that you folks are not taking any action against them. So those lawsuits will be filed if that permit is issued for that farm to table event. And Ben, I'm sure you're aware of this because we've had this discussion back in September of 2020 with my attorney. Their policy, just so you know, Sylvester Manor's policy is not to refund money for these events. And so right now they're acting as if they've got a permit in place to host that event and they're collecting monies for that. I gave that organization $30,000, which I think is probably $30,000 more than everybody inside of this room has ever given them. And I asked Ben through my attorney to return that money, and he said, that is not our policy. So right now they're collecting money. Do you know how much money they're trying to collect?
You're off topic again.
$6 million.
Testifying on my behalf.
Pardon me?
And testifying on my behalf.
That's a statement.
Finish.
Did you not speak with my attorney and say that you wouldn't return my $30,000?
We're off topic, and so we'll keep this on resolutions. If you want to continue at the end of the meeting, we can.
I'm great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Mike, is there anyone else for resolutions? Anyone in the Zoom audience? Okay, we will start with the first resolution. Albert?
Be resolved that the town board of the town of Shelter Island hereby directs that a public hearing shall be held on Monday, June 3rd, 2024 at 6:02 PM to hear any and all persons either for or against a local law entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 109 entitled Site Plan Review, to expand the applicability of site plan review, of which provides as follows. Did I read this or summarize?
Legislative intent.
A local law amending 109 entitled Site Plan Review to expand the applicability of site plan review, being enacted by the town board of the town of Shelter Island as follows. Legislative intent. The town board finds that the current applicability of site plan review is too narrow, as it only applies to businesses and does not capture other uses that may have parking, lighting, loading, and density impacts that are more intense than that of a dwelling or accessory thereto. In order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community, the trigger for site plan must be expanded so these non-residential uses can be properly vetted and situated. Okay, the Shelter Island Code, Chapter 109, Site Plan Review is hereby amended by deleting the stricken words and adding the underlined words as follows. Applicability. When required, the chapter shall apply to any land use that is permitted pursuant to Chapter 133 of the Town Code, except a single-family or two-family home use on a single and separate lot, and customers' accessory uses thereto. What's that?
You can skip all of
Yeah.
the summary. This one.
Where is it? So here it is. So the summary of the proposed law. The purpose of this local law is to ensure that all non-residential uses are required to have site plan approval so as to ensure that such uses are conducted in a manner that is compatible with and does not detrimentally impact the surrounding community. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Whereas Karen Fior of 142 G Northbury Road has requested an exemption from the dock moratorium on the processing and approval of new dock permits by the town board. Now therefore be it resolved, a public hearing shall be held on Monday, June 3rd, 2024 at 6:06 PM prevailing time in the Shelter Island Town Hall for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed request. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Whereas the Menanche Creek Keepers appeared in front of the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board to make an application for funding the Menanche Creek Water Quality Study Project in the amount of $2,800 for the third monitoring site equipment and replacement of DO sensor caps for sites 1 and 2. Now therefore be it resolved that a public hearing shall be held on Monday, June 3rd, 2024 at 6:08 PM prevailing time for the purpose of determining whether to utilize WQI funds for the costs associated with the project. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Richard Coles, 36 Little Ram Island Drive, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to install a mooring at a location designated as latitude 41.08013 degrees north and longitude 72.30123 degrees west. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 90-5 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, a public hearing will be held at 6:10 PM prevailing time on Monday, June 3rd, 2024 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested parties to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed installation. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas John Coutula, 37 Smith Street, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to install a mooring at a location designated.
I need to,
No, you can just abstain.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind, sorry,
Keep
go ahead.
has latitude 41.066882 degrees north and longitude 72.310762 degrees west. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 90.5 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, public hearing will be held at 6:12 p.m. prevailing time on Monday, June 3rd, 2024, in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed installation. So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay, motion carries.
Whereas a public hearing was duly held on the 15th day of April 2024 for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed zoning law entitled The Local Law Amending Chapter 133 entitled Zoning to alter the mechanism to exceed the maximum square foot living area for a one-family dwelling from a town board issued special permit to an area variance and to increase penalties, of which provides as follows. Legislative intent. The town board finds that the current town board special permit process employed to permit one-family dwellings to exceed 5,999 square feet of living area is standardless and thus arbitrary. The board further finds that large homes are not in size and mass in keeping with the character of the community should not be deemed de facto permitted with the mere procurement of a special permit. Thus, the town board has determined that the more appropriate method of review such requests is the area variance, which weighs the benefit of the applicant squarely against the burden to the health, safety, and welfare that may be suffered by the community. The zoning board is thereby best situated, equipped, and statutorily authorized to handle such a review. Further, the town board has determined that to ensure compliance therewithin, enhanced penalties are necessary. And essentially what this does is it just moves from a special permit to an area variance if someone looks to exceed the 5,999 square foot cap. Then it does it for each district. And then the penalties are for a conviction of 133-6B6, 133-7B6, and 133-10B6. By a fine of not less than $5,000 or up to $500 per illicit square foot of living area over 5,999 square feet, or by imprisonment not to exceed 1 year or both such fine and imprisonment. If any section or subsection, paragraph, clause, phrase, or provision of this law shall be adjudged invalid or held unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, and judgment made thereby shall not affect the validity of this law as a whole or any part thereof, other than the part provision so adjudged to be invalid or unconstitutional. This local law shall take effect upon the filing with Secretary of State to pursuant to municipal home rule law. So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Whereas pursuant to section 53-10A of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, permit fees for the construction, alteration, modification, or repair of a dock shall be established by resolution of the town board. And whereas the town board has determined that said fee schedule should be amended, now therefore be it resolved that effective immediately, the fees for repairs and dredging are hereby set as follows. Dredging, $175, and repairs, $175. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Ulrich and Aline Ambrust have applied for a rebate from the town of Shelter Island under Chapter 88 of Shelter Island Town Code to install a low nitrogen sanitary system for a property located at 18 Bayshore Drive, Shelter Island, New York. And whereas the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board has reviewed the project and recommended a conditional rebate of up to $21,000 be awarded. Now therefore, be it resolved that the town board hereby adopts the findings of the WQIAB and approves the applicant for a conditional rebate of up to $21,000 in eligible costs upon completion of the project and subject to the applicant's compliance with and completion of all terms and conditions of the conditional rebate agreement. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be given to the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board and the Building Department. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved, the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to execute the agreement between the town of Shelter Island in Suffolk County for the nutrition program for the elderly with a term of January 1, 2024 through December 31, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to execute the agreement between the town of Shelter Island and Suffolk County for the Youth Bureau Recreation Program with a term of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st of 2024. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Be it resolved that the supervisor or their designee is hereby authorized to sign the agreement with Public Sector HR Consultants LLC and submit a payment of $2,500 to update and amend Town of Shelter Island Employee Handbook. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that Thomas Hungden is hereby appointed to serve as on-call as needed driver for the senior center for the year 2024 at a rate of $24.19 per hour, not to exceed 20 hours per week, starting May 7, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas the term of Keith Clark and Kevin Sanwall as members of the Taylor's Island Preservation and Management Committee expired on January 17th, 2024. Whereas Mr. Clark and Mr. Sanwall have expressed willingness to continue to serve in said capacity, now therefore be it resolved that Keith Clark and Kevin Sanwall are hereby reappointed to serve as members of the Taylor's Island Preservation and Management Committee for a term to expire on January 17th, 2027. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas the term of Joseph Denny as a member of the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board expired on February 2nd, 2024, and whereas Mr. Denny has expressed willingness to continue to serve in said capacity, now therefore be it resolved that Joseph Denny is hereby reappointed to serve as a member of the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board for a term to expire on February 2nd, 2027. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Be it resolved that Julia Weisenberg is hereby appointed to serve as recreational specialist for the year 2024 to be paid at a rate of $30 per hour retroactive to May 4th, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that Rosie Hanley is hereby appointed to serve as recreation aide for the year 2024 to be paid at a rate of $17 per hour, retroactive to May 4th, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas pursuant to Chapter 33 of the Shelter Island Town Code, Shelter Island Run Incorporated, Elite Feats Incorporated have requested permission as per application to hold the annual Shelter Island 10K Run and the 5K Run Walk on Shelter Island on Saturday, June 15th, 2024, from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Shelter Island American Legion Post, Shelter Island, New York, and Fisk Field. And whereas the required fees have been submitted, and whereas pursuant to Section 33-2B2, the town board has determined that the proposed run and walk will benefit the town, and no fees will be required for police and highway costs associated with the event. And whereas said applicant has requested an exemption from the noise ordinance, and whereas the police department has responded that they are prepared to assist with this event as they have done in the past. And whereas the superintendent of highways responded that if there are any markings on the street, they must be washable and any signage removed immediately after the race, and the highway department will coordinate any details with the racing committee. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board does hereby approve the event. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to credit the sum of $3,982.53 for the overpayment of mooring renewals to the Shelter Island Yacht Club. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions?
I abstain.
Motion carries. Be it resolved that the following funds are hereby encumbered from the 2023 budget to be expended in 2024 with 2023 funds to wit, $1,796.59 from the A1410.200 Town Clerk Equipment account for the purchase of a Dell Latitude 7640. Sorry. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that the 2024 general claims numbered 699 through 842 in the amount of $92,171.50. The 2024 highway claims numbered 78 through 97 in the amount of $16,263.13. And the 2024 Community Preservation Fund claim number 4 in the amount of $10.36. The 2024 Water Quality Improvement Fund claim number 5 in the amount of $10.36 are hereby approved for payment as audited. And the supervisor and/or any town board member is hereby authorized and directed to sign the approval for payment of same. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, so that concludes the regular portion of our meetings. And go into the first public hearing on wetlands and transfer.
6:02 PM prevailing time on the proposed local law entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 129 entitled Wetlands to Transfer Approval Authority from the Planning Board to the Town Board.
And we have correspondence on that, if you would read that, please.
From Julia Weisenberg. I am writing you on the occasion of the public meeting to address the possible legislation of the town board's Taking Back Wetland application. I am a current planning board member. When our board was tasked with taking on the process review and decision-making on wetlands, it was a responsibility that bore much weight. I personally was very much in touch with that significance as it affected both the environment and residents' relationship with their community and neighbors. That heaviness was a positive thing, though. It caused me to regiment in the scrutinizing of data, seeking our attorney's advice, exhausting all resources, double-checking and triple-checking criteria and code, so as to make the fairest law-adhering decision. The ethical obligation to remain non-emotional yet fact-driven left many a sleepless night for me. I felt confident in the nuts and bolts of how we set up the review flow of applications, kept things orderly and timely, and maintained a professional settling despite what was often very heated testimonies at public hearings and on Zoom. In that time of wetlands review, it became evident to me that adhering to the law caused serious discontent with many because the law and its current content did not yield the result wanted. It was obvious the desires of the current day residents about construction in general were different from the antiquated code. I felt like a carpenter sent to a job with the wrong tools. Sending another carpenter with the same deficient toolbox will not solve this problem. It is not for this reason I object to the decision to remove that process from us and return it to the town board. If I were equipped with a revamped, updated code that reflects current values to protect the shores and interior waters for people of 2024, it would be refreshing to deliver law-adhering decisions that would sit better with the public. Again, it's not the carpenter, it's his or her tool. If unfortunately the decision process of wetlands reverts to you, you will feel this weight as much as I did. Right now, instead, it's urgent that you, the town board members, update the wetlands code to help me as a planning board member and my cohorts to our duties. That is how we best can do our work for the public. You provide the best precision tools with low margin of error and send us out to do the hard work. Thank you, Julia Weisen. And then also from Louis Cohen, Shelter Island Heights property owners. I enthusiastically support the proposal to return decision-making authority on wetlands applications to the town board. As chair of the Heights, I see an increasing number of construction projects along the shoreline, and it is clear our precious and fragile wetlands need to be managed with more, not fewer, protections and oversight. I have confidence in the town board will give decisions about the wetlands the careful and then complete environmental reviews these sensitive projects require, consulting the proper experts without rushing to judgment. Our wetlands could be lost forever, which would be devastating for our community and our environmental legacy. Please do your best to protect them. Louis Cohen. Stella Lugutis. On behalf of the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation Board of Directors, I submit this letter of support regarding the town board reassuming oversight and decision-making responsibility for all wetlands applications from the planning board. The town board has direct responsibility for the island's overall comprehensive plan and strategy and is accountable to the voters. The town board also sees the big picture when complex projects cross multiple chapters of the town code. For these reasons, the Heights strongly opposed to last year's transfer of decision-making authority to the planning board, and the Heights was not alone in this objection. The initial rationale and to delegate decision-making to the planning board was flawed, and this board is willing to see the error in the original decision and place the process back on the right path. It is clear that this town board encourages more open dialogue among board members and the public. The Wetlands Town Code needs to be revised as well, but the challenges that the planning board delegation created were not solely based on the current code. The lack of the experience in planning board member engagement, the false promise of qualified environmental and legal resources, and the inability to handle environmentally complex projects that touch upon multiple sections of the town code all contributed to a broken process. In fact, the planning board did not properly implement their own wetlands criteria for permit issuance, Chapter 129.5, during one of the most critical applications to come before it. It is not easy to unwind a decision once it is made. The town board understands that if the wetlands decision-making is not rescinded, it will irreparably destroy the island's fragile wetlands character. And Stella agrees.
We will open this up to the public for comment. Start with the person audience. Please come up, state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Lori Baird Raymond. And first, I would like to say I'm glad to be here this evening discussing the transfer of the wetlands permit process, authority process back to the town board. I'm here speaking for myself this evening as a person who's been intimately involved with the town's wetlands application process for several years. As I said originally in previous public hearings, when the town board changed the authority to the planning board, our wetlands are under siege. We must better protect measures, put better protective measures in place, and a thorough review process is an essential key to part of that protection process. When the wetlands process was under the authority of the town board, that's flowed much better, as much more information was considered. In fact, the planning board members to the town board were much more thorough and detailed than the planning board engineer memos are today. Combined with the CAC reports and the building department view of the data submitted, that process somehow came together before it was transferred to the planning board. The current process for wetlands permits for the planning board is indeed flawed, and even more so when the planning board chairman recuses himself in addition to the lack of experience, the lack of consideration of the CAC, as well as the lack of consideration of other chapters of the town code, which include Chapter 133, which is zoning, 60, which is environmental quality review, and 68, which is flood damage protection, to the detriment of our environment and wetlands. The current process is also not keeping with the current 1994 adopted comprehensive plan. When the town board transferred the wetlands process to the planning board, it was with the understanding that an outside environmental consultant would be obtained for complex application. This has not been utilized by the planning board as the town board had promised when they transferred this authority. We need an environmental engineer as a consultant to the town board who can review these applications at the beginning of the review process at the expense of the applicants. The town board has the authority and the access to outside environmental experts who are more qualified to assist in the wetlands review process. The hearing process under the town board used to be a presentation, an exchange of information, and discussion before the hearing was closed, which could then allow the town board to ask for additional documents or expertise as it was discussed during the hearing. New documents should not be allowed to be submitted after a hearing is closed and before the public can obtain or even review them. The town code, which consists of many different chapters, are meant to work together. It is only in this way that a thorough evaluation can take place. The town board has the responsibility for the island's overall protection on many environmental issues the island is faced with today, which include groundwater, surface water, aging septic systems, runoff, flooding, sea level rise, erosion, contaminants, and overdevelopment, all of which are important factors in the wetlands application review process. The town board is accountable to the voters. The planning board is not. Thank you.
Ian McDonald, the chairman of the planning board. We've spoken about this transfer many times, and I want to make 2 points. One, the planning board used to be in control of site plan review, and for a similar, what's assumed political reasons, the town board took site plan review back from the planning board. And this was in 2020. My memory does not fail me. Amber, Al, you were both part of that town board that rescinded the planning board's review of site plan review. Today, the town board does not have an application for site plan review, does not have fees for site plan review, and have, in a way, one could argue, botched past site plan reviews. I'm thinking particularly about parking associated with the Leon restaurant and other issues. I don't think that the planning board, in a way, has the ability, the consultants and knowledge of how to review a site plan properly. But we move ahead. I'm warning the planning town board about taking back wetlands review now too. We have a environmental planner who's as a background in environmental studies. We, as a planning board, have been analyzing for the town board and now for ourselves for many years and in detail environmental wetlands applications. We go to the project site, we send members there, they analyze, they take pictures, they come back and report to us. I think in the past few years of the town board doing this, no town board member ever went to a application site to review the conditions. We do a thorough analysis, we listen to the CAC comments and incorporate them as best we can in a very practical and pragmatic sense into our review. We've also been following the code specifically, using that. Wetlands Code is chapter 133. We focus on 133. Arguments are about some kid riding a bicycle, safety of a kid riding a bicycle on New York Avenue. That has nothing to do with the application. And that's been thrown out of us in the past. So I think we're focused on the code. I think the code, as everyone's saying, definitely needs to be updated. And I applaud you guys for working on it now. And hopefully that will be in place. The other thing I think is really wrong with the town board taking back wetlands review are the optics. Ben, you said that you're a water. In a work session, you said you don't have an environmental background. You don't understand, this work. You'll be relying on consultants. Amber, you're an accountant, very good for town finances, and that's a great thing to have as a supervisor. But again, it's not a background in environmental studies. Megan, you've worked with the health department on many applications. I think of all the board members, you have the most experience. You were on the planning board. You understand how we reviewed things. And I think too, you have the most experience here. Al, if I read the Shelter Island Reporter right, you were a demolition contractor. I don't know that there's a background in environmental action there. So here we have a board, a wetlands planning board, which has a lot of history, experience in reviewing wetlands, as an expert with our engineer, who's a planner with an environmental studies background. And we've put together a very good, solid process going forward. All the complaints you're hearing right now are mostly from the Shelter Island Heights Property Owner Corporation. They didn't like how the planning board reviewed one application. They're currently suing the planning board because they don't like this. And of course, they're going to come up and speak negatively against it. So I just think it's a very good process to keep with the planning board right now. But if you so to choose back and take it back, we'll work with you as best we can. But I personally, and I think I speak for the planning board, think it's a bad move. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's Stella Lagutis from the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corp. And I just want to add a few comments to the letter that was read by Amber. And these are observations that have been, they're observations that our board and our Property and Roads Committee have made as they've looked at not only the one application that Ian just referenced, but in looking at some of the other applications as well. When the decision was made for this to go back, to go to the let me start over. When the decision was made to have the planning board assume the role of making decisions on the applications, the things that I heard and others heard were that we want to make it easier administratively, or we want to make it easier for the applicant. But nowhere did we hear that anybody wanted to make it tougher to mess up the wetlands or to do things that were not good for us to do for the environment. The whole purpose of the wetlands code and the law is to protect, not to make it easier for an applicant. And if anything, hopefully those of you who are working on changing the code, which I think we all agree needs help, you will be making it more difficult to do work in the wetlands rather than easier. Some of the things that we observed during the process of the planning board looking at wetlands applications include the fact that the engineer who works with the planning board, he's a really good guy. I think he does great with site plan reviews and the like. But he does no more than check the applications for completeness. And he's looking to see that you've got surveys. He's not making any decisions on if things such as calculations for runoff make sense or not in the location that they're in. The planning board doesn't necessarily, well, they see the big picture, but as Ian just discussed, the planning board isn't responsible for the big picture. They're responsible for their chapter. And there are so many times in so many of the hearings that we were told, and we can't do anything about that because it's not in the wetlands chapter. Well, these are really complex requests and they cut across multiple chapters. 133, chapter 60. So someone's got to be able to kind of tie those loose ends together so we get the big picture. We can't assume that every wetlands application is automatically a rubber stamp of a secret type 2. There are things in our code that says, we've got to look at each and every application, and we can't be publishing in the newspaper that it's a secret type 2 before the planning board even discusses it and makes sure that that's the right designation. There are criteria that we've got to go through in order to award someone a permit to build in the wetlands. One of those things is that there's got to be no other option for that applicant. Well, you've got to ask the applicant for the options before you make the assumption that there's no alternative. So the code itself does say that you just need a permit to go into the adjacent vegetative buffer. It doesn't say that it's a slam dunk to get that permit. Assumably, you have to prove that it's not going to be to the detriment, so it goes back to that criteria. It's not going to be a detriment to the environment or the folks around the project. And we've got to stick to that. So I think if you look at some of the applications that went through, this is not about the people making the choice. I feel like we've tied their hands because we've asked them to look at this big picture, and yet their mandate is to look at a smaller piece of that puzzle. So I think by taking it back, you're making the right decision. I give you credit for coming back to it because the promise was made. And, our board is really quite happy with the fact that you're even having this discussion and you're making the consideration. So thank you.
Anyone else in the physical audience who wishes to speak? Is there anyone in the Zoom audience who wishes to speak?
Hello?
Pam? And then Marcus.
Hello, I'm Marcus, Deputy Chairman.
No, Marcus, Pam had her hand up first.
Oh,
so
okay.
Call on Pam first, and then we'll go to you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Pam Demarest. I agree that this is going to be helpful to get a review of any of these wetland applications and to get the big picture of what the project really entails. My observations of planning review is that they've ignored things like demolition in the wetlands area right now, as far as new applications have come through in the past year. And to me, that's a very important part of the puzzle, and the clearing of the vegetation necessary for some projects that have been put out there. Whether or not some projects really can be accepted as a wetlands 100 square foot exemption is still not very clear either. So I do applaud you for taking this out of the hands of the planning board so that all of the other parts of our town code that are applicable to wetlands applications, including the building chapter, zoning, environmental, and will be included in a total review of every wetlands application going forward. So I thank you for considering this, and I applaud you for moving it forward.
Thank you, Pam. Marcus? You're on mute.
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you.
It's been a while since I've done one of these. I think that I like it better with the planning board making the decisions on wetlands. And in fact, I don't think it is right that the town board should have the burden and temptation of making those decisions. By burden, I calculate that I spend 15 hours a week on planning board stuff, which is mostly wetlands. And do any of the town board members have an extra 15 hours a week? Also, temptation, you could have a situation where a very controversial application is, and the next door neighbor is one of your donors. And, even if you're doing everything right, that would become so suspicious. To me, it's like it should be almost against the law that town board members should have authority over wetlands decision-making, just like it is against New York State town law that a town board member can't be a planning board member. So I've looked at this a lot. I've got a lot of experience. I got 6.5 years on the planning board. And the way we're doing it now with the planning board making decision is a much better way of doing it. It's more thorough, it's safer, and it will go into the future even better. The old way we were doing it is first, we would get the application, 2 members of the planning board would be assigned to go to the site and write a memorandum with limited amounts of experience. Who knows how many years they were on. But the new way is we have an engineer write the memo, someone who's very knowledgeable in town law, and it's just so much better of a way. And those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. And the thing is, I heard some suggestions from other people that like we don't do the right thing. We always do the right thing. We follow the law. We follow chapter 129. You got to think, where does a wetlands application come from? Well, it comes from something called the letter of denial, or now it's called a letter of disapproval. But it's the building department telling the applicant, hey, look, you got some activity here, some construction here in the adjacent, in the vegetative buffer or the adjacent. So you need, by law, even says so, by chapter 129, you have to go to the planning board. It's all very clear. There's a logical path to everything. You know, we don't care about the other chapter 133 or so, because the building department would have already screened through that, you see? Okay, any questions?
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in the Zoom audience? Kim, I see you unmuted. Is that a request to speak?
No, that's an accident, sorry.
There's no one else who wishes to speak. We will close this hearing and pick it up at the work session for discussion. Okay. So all in favor of closing it? Aye.
Bye.
The next public hearing is for extending moratorium on dock permits. Amber?
6:04 PM prevailing time on the proposed local law entitled "A Local Law to Extend the Moratorium on the Processing and Approval of Dock Permits by the Town Board."
There's no correspondence.
No
Okay. We will open it up to the public then, for anyone who wishes to speak on this topic.
I just want to inject one thing real quick for the record. On May 1st, I appeared in front of the Suffolk County Planning Commission and conveyed the progress that we made on updating, because as you're aware, they approved the 3-month moratorium. So we had to appear back in front of them to ask for another 3 months. They were very impressed with the progress that we made so far. Bill provided me with a letter that, went through everything they've done thus far, and they unanimously supported a further 3-month extension.
Thank you.
And that 3-month ends when again?
It's going to end in August.
Yeah, it currently
August
ends,
6th.
I think, tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's why we're having a public hearing
So let's vote on
and
it
having
now.
we're having the resolution after that we finish up with the public hearing.
13.
Well, just for clarity, so it's May 13th that it starts. So we adopted it on February 5th. However, it wasn't officially filed with the Secretary of State till the 13th of February, so it expires May 13th.
So anyone from the physical audience? Anyone from the Zoom audience? Okay, there being no one, we'll move to close this hearing. Make motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The next public hearing is on fertilizers.
So 6 PM prevailing time on the proposed local law entitled "A Local Law Adding a New Chapter 67 entitled Fertilizer to Regulate the Use of Fertilizers on the Island."
Then we did get just a little past 5, I believe. Pam is on. A letter from you, Pam. Do you want Amber to read your letter, or would you like to?
Well, Amber can read the letter. I just thought we might be able to go through the legislation as well a little bit.
Okay, so if you go ahead and read that, you have that.
I write to you for consideration of my views and questions regarding the new town code, chapter 67 fertilizer. I find the legislative intent is unclear and some of the language ambiguous. The absence of definitions and the absence of specific language from the Suffolk County fertilizer law is troubling to me. Attached is a copy of the available draft of this legislation I have marked with my concerns. Also attached are sample brochures and poster available from the New York State DEC for public education. This legislation is targeting the residents and is not inclusive of certain business establishments, county compliance, and as such, it should be amended. May I ask that you take sufficient time to review all comments from the public and keep the public hearing open for further discussion. Also, may I suggest you review the New York State nutrient runoff law for guidance. I trust with diligence a solution can be reached that does not create any unwanted consequences and is for the health, welfare, and safety of the public at large. Respectfully, Pam Zimmer.
One of the things, let me just get my bearings here. I'm just looking for the fertilizer. Okay, one of the things noted, Pam, and we had a little discussion just before this meeting, your comments were on an earlier version of the law, and the public hearing was set on April 15th, and it was included in that set of resolutions what that draft was, and it was also published in the paper, but we did realize today that the website did not have the most recent draft legislation. So some of your comments are on things that are no longer within the current draft that was set for public hearing. So I'm like having a little.
That's a little troubling then. Maybe that's another reason just to leave this public hearing open, because anyone else in my position who's looking at the law online thinks that that's what you're discussing tonight. In any case, as you can see, there are still many definitions that haven't been included in this legislation. There's strange language as such as vegetable manure. I don't know what that is. It needs some cleaning up, and I do believe that it needs some more additions from the Suffolk County fertilizer law, which is not just based on lawn fertilizers, And I will tell you from my professional experience in the landscaping business, that landscapers are not the offenders with fertilization or over-fertilization or improper fertilization. They go through a certification program, they carry their valid permits for applying fertilizers, and it really is the homeowners who are the most egregious in applying fertilizer. And part of the trouble is that lawn fertilizer makes your lawn look great as a homeowner. You put it down, it looks great. And you think, oh, if I add a little more, it'll look even better. And there's no telling homeowners that that's absolutely improper application of fertilizers on their lawns. I just think there's a lot of language here that's not quite relevant, and other language that is relevant from Suffolk County's fertilizer law that should be implemented here. So if it's possible to leave the hearing open and you can review what I wrote, and maybe other people have some other concerns to give you some thought on this. I just don't think it's really ready for prime time.
Yeah, we will see if there's anyone else who has public comments on this.
Lisa Shaw. We started a subcommittee in September. We formed a subcommittee to look over fertilizer law, or even the term fertilizer as it applied in the town code. And there were mentions of fertilizer all over the place, but there was no concise or dedicated section for fertilizer. So we decided to take the term, define it, and make it cohesive, or rather understandable. And the impetus for contributing the fertilizer section in the code, we are trying to educate the Green Committee and the Water Advisory Committee. Our principal thrust is education. Education for homeowners to know how to fertilize, what the terms mean. And so our intent is still to develop a brochure that will go out to homeowners, that will be put at places where fertilizers are sold. And it's an educational effort. But in order to give this educational effort teeth, we felt it needed to be included in the code so that there would be some understanding that the town as a total, as an entity, took the subject seriously, and that we were addressing it and not just asking homeowners to do it out of the goodness of their hearts, but to take a more serious tack. So that was the beginnings of this legislation. We looked through many different townships and how they incorporated legislation into their code. We borrowed the language and the terms, and we met for probably a good 4 to 5 months and came up with a draft, which we handed over to the town to clarify. The runoff law, and let me just start out by saying that the justification for the law, as far as the DEC goes, had to be, how is your neighborhood, how is your town, why is it necessary for your town to have a law or legislation that goes beyond the New York State runoff law or goes beyond Suffolk County law? So we justified that by including, because we had actually have had studies on Shelter Island that have stated that harmful algal blooms, as experienced in West Neck Bay, Creek and Harbor, and Fresh Pond, are a result of nitrogen and nitrate intrusions. So that was our justification for the legislative intent, if you will. And as far as the definitions goes, you can be very comprehensive in definitions, and I will speak for the town, but I probably should defer to the attorney. We felt it would be onerous to put the definitions of every single one of these terms in the code. It would, just give it more reading, for example. And a lot of these terms come from terms that are already in New York State in the runoff law and defined. So that's one reason why we don't have a long list of definitions. However, I can understand if you're reading through the code and you don't know, for example, what unmanipulated animal and vegetable manure is, you might want to know what that is, but I can understand that question. So that's the history of how this all began. And I agree, Pam, with Pam's comment that homeowners need direction as far as fertilizer goes, but one of our intents also, every lawn care professional is supposed to be licensed through the Shelter Island town. However, most of us have driven by trucks where lawn care is, and we've seen lawn care providers that have no licensure, that have no insurance information on their vehicles. So it's hard to know if they're licensed. Those are the landscapers that we want to target, because it's beneficial to all of us if all of the landscapers take this turf management course that landscapers who are licensed through Shelter Island take. But the truth is that not all of them are. So we want to target them.
And just a second, do we have an issue, Christina?
What the heck is that?
I can see myself moving. If Pam or Julie Lane or someone on Zoom, Zoom could just let us know if you're hearing us.
Yes, we can hear you.
It's not
It means
Okay.
that the camera's not functioning.
Okay, we have this at the comp plan
This happened
meeting.
at comp plan meeting.
That's some super villain to go.
We've been hacked by the camera. Cal is not happy. I mean,
It went right.
yeah,
Switch cameras like you did the last time.
yeah, last time we just used the corner camera. It depends on which one's glitching worse.
Yeah, okay, so you can continue speaking because that's getting heard by everyone.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us know.
Even though nitrogen and nitrate and phosphorus intrusion from fertilizer is relatively small percentage of the nitrogen load that is going into the shelter on groundwater, our feeling was that every little bit helps. If we can move the goalpost toward healthy groundwater, even a little bit, then we said, let's do it. Let's just get it, going in this direction. So it's not going to contribute in a tremendous amount as far as nitrogen in the aquifer in both ground and surface water, but it is going to help. So that was our feeling. And I think that about says it. So just to sum up what the subcommittee intended. Number one was educating homeowners. And educating homeowners through media, through brochures, through whatever, posters, meant that we needed to give it teeth. And we felt that the way we could give it teeth and we could make sure that homeowners took it seriously is if it was in the code that there is a violation, there is a cost of violating, penalty, if you will. And so that's sort of the track that we took.
And the portion of this that exceeds the Suffolk County, New York State requirement is that we set a 100-foot limit for application around surface water and wetlands, right? That's what differs from Suffolk County and New York State.
Well, yeah, just so we're clear, it's New York State that we need approval for. So if we exceed their fertilizer legislation, then we have to ask their permission to make it more stringent. So the first section A, where we want to make it between November 1 and April 1, it's the same as the county, but it's stricter than the state. So we're going to have to go and ask the state for that. Also, going into man-made stormwater receptacles or channels, that I don't believe is in the New York State law. So that's something that could be deemed a little stricter. And New York State requires, or prohibits rather, any application of fertilizer 20 feet from a wetland boundary. We're making it 100 feet from the wetland boundary. So that has to, again, get state blessing.
Thank you.
But everything else is basically redundant with state or county legislation. Now, we don't have to put certain provisions in here because, again, the county regs apply, the state regs apply already. So this is just a third layer. But we did so for educational purposes and then also to give us some skin in the game as far as enforcement. Because if we don't have our own local legislation, we can't send code enforcement to write a violation, or we can't send the building department to write a violation. We'd have to call over to state DEC or the county enforcement arm and wait for them to come. So this just gives us the ability, if there's some major transgression, that we can immediately send our guys out to look at it.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this? Anyone in Zoom? I was making a couple of quick notes. If we close this, we have it on the agenda for the work session tomorrow, so that we could then go through and review today plus Pam's written comments. Even though they're on an older draft, there were things that just came out. There wasn't things that were, so it gives us the opportunity to discuss. If we leave it open, we won't be able, we'll have the next hearing on June 3rd. We'd continue the public hearing on June 3rd. So we wouldn't be able to discuss it until June 4th. If we close it and decide that we do want to make some of the changes or dig a little deeper, then we would set a new public hearing on June 3rd and have the next public hearing June 24th. If we leave it open and close the hearing on June 3rd, then we'd still be looking at either setting a new public hearing June 24th or adopting June 24th if we decide that we were happy with it. So kind of on the same timetable. So my inclination is to close this and bring it back to us tomorrow and decide, you know, the merits of what direction we're going in.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's a real detriment to closing it, but we certainly should try to balance the language.
Yes, and also we can then further discuss whether or not we read the correct resolution and posted the correct resolution, setting the public hearing. It was published in the newspaper correctly. It's a courtesy to put it on the website, but I do feel badly that there wasn't the correct one on the website, and I never went to the website, you know, to double check.
Do that, maybe we should keep it open.
Okay.
We could close it subject to written comment, basically.
Yeah, which
so-
is what ZBA does.
Yeah, if there's people that are interested in commenting, they can watch the
Like that.
work session. And if it's open for 2 weeks for written comment, they can,
Okay.
respond to that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So we'll leave it open for written comment for, what do we want to say, a week?
Well, we're closing it, but we're subject to written comment.
Yes, so we would close it and allow written comment on the draft that has now been corrected on the town website.
And none of this will stop the subcommittee from doing the educational piece.
Correct.
Correct.
So
Yes.
they can move forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, but they have to know what to educate the public on, whether this exists or not.
Yeah. You had an additional comment, and I.
Yeah, I do have an addition. Okay. It will actually, because what we're waiting for is for a town to codify this before we send out the brochure. You know, we're gonna publish perhaps, I don't know, maybe 255, up to 500 brochures. And if there's nothing about the town's code in it, then our feeling is you put that brochure out, it doesn't have the codification information in it. Then you go to put another one out that does include the code. And people will look at it and say, oh, I've already read that, so I don't have to read it again. So the feeling of the committee was, let's just wait until it's codified. And I would encourage you to spring season have gone down now. There'll be a whole nother application in the fall. Every time, as long as we wait, it's just that much longer to put this off. It's that much more nitrogen going into the groundwater. So I'm encouraging you to move this forward.
Mhm. I think I like the idea of closing it with written comment, because I think that keeps us on the fastest timeline.
Yeah, I would support that.
Yeah, and so our next meeting is 4 weeks away, so we could accept written comments through May 17th, put it on the work session agenda for May 21st. So we've got the 21st and 28th for us to decide what to do when we get to June 3rd.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, everybody wants this to happen.
We lost sound? Oh, okay.
We have a 5-minute recess.
Yes. Recess for 5 minutes.
That's it.
If you have your mic off, you can see if they can hear us. Yeah, okay, got my mic on. I just want to make sure that was on. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Amber.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, okay.
We're having camera problems.
Okay, we thought we lost sound. Well, actually, the room lost sound. I'm now speaking through my computer. Okay,
Yeah, you lost sound for a minute, but the camera is off, but that's fine.
okay. No, but yeah, it's just through my computer right now. So Christina has to get that fixed. Oh, it is fixed. Oh, so I should let me mute myself.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There we go.
We got feedback.
Okay,
Okay,
turn that off.
all right. I'm not exactly sure where we lost everybody. So what we have decided is to to close the public hearing because it'll keep us the most on track for having this legislation in place at some point in the summer. So we are going to close the hearing today, but accept written comment through May 17th. And then we will put this back on the work session for the 21st. And also that leaves us the 28th also to discuss it. So then on June 3rd, we can either, if we've scratched the current draft, we can reset a public hearing or we can adopt. So, but we'll talk about that on the 21st. So apologies on the posting on the website. So please, it's correct now. So please take a look and submit any comments you have. Okay. So all in favor of closing the hearing with written comments to May 17th?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, on that one. Make a note. You see, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so Amber, the next one is the zoning legislation to create a sky plane pyramid law.
6:08 PM prevailing time on the proposed local law entitled a local law amending chapter 133 entitled zoning to create a sky plane height restriction pyramid law.
And I do not believe we had any correspondence on this.
I think so.
No, so we will open it up to the public. All right, there's no one in the physical audience. Anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak on this? Pam?
Yeah, I'll just simply say that I support this change, this law being implemented. We know that the setback issue and the smaller lots and stuff in certain areas create an issue, and taking away someone's view of the night skies on Shelter Island would be a shame. And I think that this should just go forward, and then somehow be incorporated in the future legislation on square foot living areas and maybe the proportionality law, and somehow tie them all together eventually. But I support this one, and I just thought I'd let you know that.
Thank you. Anyone else? We will close that public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
And vehicle and traffic law, town dock at Bridge Street.
6:10 PM prevailing time on the proposed local law entitled a local law amending chapter 126 entitled vehicles and traffic to amend parking restrictions at the town dock at Bridge Street.
And we didn't have any correspondence that I was aware of. Okay. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on that? Just to reiterate, there's a couple of parking spaces when you're down on Bridge Street that did not get included in the last legislation. So they're going to be included in the 1 hour parking, and we're going to make sure the signage is correct because it has been incorrect at times. So just wanted to
Then we also had,
Suffolk County.
we had no parking on 114, which we.
Which you're not allowed to.
Yeah, we gotta ask for it, and then
Yes.
we may revisit it, but, so we're removing that.
That's correct. Okay, so
Thank you.
is there anyone in the Zoom audience that wishes to speak on this?
Can I say something?
Sure. Just state your name for the record, please.
Yes, Bert Waif. Is this going to be a year-round regulation?
No,
No.
it's only when parking permits are effective,
Just seasonal? Right.
May 15th to September 15th.
Okay. And is there any, I guess you can't make an exception for commercial vehicles or anything? You don't care? Just,
It's not that we don't care, it's just.
Yeah.
or it doesn't matter,
It
right?
applies to
Equal
everyone.
protection.
You can't make it that specific. Okay, well, if it's seasonal, I guess that's fine. Sometimes you're doing some work at the dock and you might be there for longer than an hour. But if I can understand some of the seasonal nature of it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Have a motion to close that hearing.
So moved.
Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public hearing portion of the meeting. So we will go back into the regular meeting. On the resolution that we wanted to adopt this evening, which was the local law for the extending moratorium on the processing and approval of documents. I've highlighted the sections that needed to be read, so I'll just. Whereas a public hearing was duly held on the 6th day of May 2024 for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to proposed local law entitled Local Law to Extend the Moratorium on the Processing and Approval of Documents by the Town Board, which provides as follows: Local Law Number 4 of 2024, a local law entitled A Local Law to Extend the Moratorium on the Processing and Approval of Documents by the Town Board, which provides as follows. Be it enacted by the Town Board of the Town of Shelter Island as follows. Section 1, Legislative Intent. Due to the increased growth and a spread of development throughout the town, including the request for docks along Shelter Island's fragile shoreline and a growing disparity between the town code as written and the needs of our community, the Town Board enacted a 3-month moratorium on the acceptance and review of all new and pending dock applications. In accordance therewith, the Town Board charged the Waterways Management Advisory Council, WMAC, to review the adequacy of our current dock code and to rewrite same to balance the interest of upland owners' access to navigation against the public's use of the water for boating, fishing, swimming, and other recreational activities. While the WMAC has made great strides toward the completion of its review and redraft of the dock code, more time is required. Therefore, it is necessary for the moratorium to be extended to afford sufficient time for the completion of the draft and a public hearing to be had on same. Section 2, Moratorium Extended Term. A local law number 1 of 2024 imposing a 3-month moratorium requiring that no board, body, committee, official, or employee of the town of Shelter Island shall accept for review, continue to review, hold a hearing upon, make any decisions upon, or issue any permit or approval upon any application or proposal for any construction of a dock located within the town of Shelter Island is hereby extended for an additional 3-month period of time through August 6, 2024. We're skipping some other parts that are available at the town clerk's office and online. Section 9, effective date. This local law shall take effect upon filing with the Secretary of State pursuant to municipal home rule law. Summary of proposed law. The purpose of this law is to extend the moratorium on the acceptance and processing of dock applications by 3 months to afford additional time to update the dock code. So moved.
Second.
Sorry.
All in favor? Aye. So moved. Motion carried. That's it. Do we have any public that wishes to speak on any other topic? Okay, there being none, I will entertain a motion to close the meeting. Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. We have a town board work session tomorrow.